Tonight our guest is Bob Layton.
The
best dressed man in comics. I've known Bob for many years. We've been running into each other at conventions all over.
Mike, we've known each other almost 40 years, man.
No,
yeah.
Really stupid.
And Bob is perhaps best known for his run on Iron Man, the iconic run, which he did with Dave Michelini, and the unforgettable Demon in a Bottle, which he has recreated many times. But Bob is also one of the founders of Valiant Comics, for which I worked, and they had some great titles back in the day.
Yeah, I never got a chance to fire you either. No, we had a great time at Valiant. You're one of the guys I went after.
Yeah,
I wanted to work with people that I enjoyed personally and professionally, and you were a friend, and you were also a terrific writer. So,
thank you, sir.
Happy to have you on board.
I think I nailed every script I wrote for them except for Archer and Armstrong.
Yeah, Barry, look, that's like trying to follow Robert Downey as Iron Man.
Yeah.
I mean, after Barry, it was a really hard act to follow. So I put you like in a hole there. I know. I apologize.
But then you allowed me to crawl out of it with a number of other titles.
Right, but I'm saying, I admire your balls for doing it, because I wouldn't want to follow Barry on anything,
I didn't know any better.
And it was probably at the pinnacle of his career. I mean, Archer and Armstrong was definitive Barry Windsor-Smith, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, I didn't envy you on that, but at least you had the guts to do it, And you had Voss, who's terrific. It's like Mike Vosberg, one of my personal favorites, a artist. Not a fan fave, but man, I always love his stuff.
Great artist, and also Rags Morales, whom we
that's right.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we talked.
Well, I quit reading the book after you started it. Yeah. So I don't know if he was on there or not. Was he?
What, on Turok?
I'm kidding. All right, it's like wow. I had to read the book. I was the editor in chief.
Oh, that's right.
Man.
And also, you always spoke highly of Dick Giordano, and Dick was my editor briefly at DC on a number of projects, and he was a great artist in his own right. In fact, the artist to whom I most often compared him was Neil Adams.
Well, Dickie was my mentor, from the time I was a teenager. I started working for Wally Wood, but Woody retired like 9 months into my apprenticeship with him. And then Dickie, I was living in Connecticut at the time. This is like 75, 76, and Dickie took me under his wing. But he mentored me through my entire career. When I was at Valiant, he was running DC, right? He was managing editor.
That's right.
We used to have to meet in secret because we didn't want to get sued for collusion or whatever. If the head of DC and the head of Valiant were meeting, comparing notes,
That's
that in the business sense, we could have gotten in trouble, but we just want. And, here I am, I'm running a company with 200 employees, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, from day to day. I mean, we got by, but, inside I was freaking. And Dickie not only was a terrific artist, and probably one of the greatest inkers of all time, but he was a solid businessman. Dickie understood the business, and he stressed that to me early in my career, to learn the business you're in. Mike, you know how much it costs to produce a comic, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, you see, how many guys in the business do? Very few.
Well, once you get into crowdfunding, you learn.
I was going to say now.
Yeah, I'm saying, I'm talking about the point of it is learning. I learned the business of comics in my 20s.
Right.
Yeah.
Dickie was grooming me, to take a top slot somewhere. So it was like just a matter of time. But he had always pushed me because he saw that I had a potential, not just as a creator, but as a businessman. So that was a part of his emphasis. He was an amazing guy. We're coming up on the anniversary of his death too. It'll be 12 years in March. I was by his side when he died, man.
I know.
Yeah, it's like he was the only closest thing I ever had to a father, and I miss him every day. I quote him all the time.
He was a great man.
Yep,
Back in those days, the editors at the major companies were serious people who understood storytelling and all aspects of the business.
that's exactly right. You know, those days unfortunately are long gone. You and I were so fortunate. We had guys like Archie Goodwin and Denny O'Neil editing our scripts.
That's right.
You know, I mean, how can you fall on your face when you have talent of that magnitude, basically, you know, overseeing you on a day-to-day basis?
That's
You know,
right.
it was a different world. Yeah, without a doubt.
And one of the things that made them both outstanding editors were that they were writers first.
Yep.
And then they
Exactly.
became editors. So they understood what it was to create a story, and they understood what constituted story, which is sometimes hard to see.
You know how I always felt. The story was everything. I mean, that's why I'm the only inker writer in first inker writer in comics, because character and story is everything. You know, without that, no matter how pretty the pictures are, you know, it's not memorable.
That's true.
And I always tell the story how Dickie, I was on the train going into continuity. You know, this is like in '76 or whatever. I lived up in Connecticut, so we would catch a train and go into Manhattan, where continuity was, you know, on Madison Avenue. And Dickie would be sitting there in his suit. He always had his suit on, right? You know, he'd be reading the New York Times, and there's little Bobby Layton sitting over there, and I'm reading a copy of Avengers or something, right? And Dickie reaches over and pulls it out of my hand, and he looks at me and he goes, "Young man," he goes, "what's your intention?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Is this going to be your job or your hobby? If it's your hobby, I can't do anything for you. If it's going to be your job, you're going to have to find some other form of entertainment." And I said, "Why is that?" And he goes, "Well, because you won't bring anything original to the game. If you all your influences are the same medium that you derive entertainment for." I took that to heart. I mean, I got rid of my comic book collection the next month. I sold everything. You know, Marvel always provided me with enough reference of what I needed or whatever, but I don't have a comic collection or anything like that. I got a few long boxes back here, stuff that's sent to me. Yeah. You know, I mean, like copies of stuff that I've done, but you know, so I became a football fan, which is appropriate considering we're doing this 2 days before the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, what was your team? Was your team the Dolphins?
Well, growing up, it was the Jets, because the very first game I ever watched as a kid was Super Bowl III with Broadway Joe Namath. So I grew up in Indiana. We didn't have a team back then. So you either rooted for Cincinnati or for Chicago, which is the closest teams or whatever. Yeah. But I became enamored with the Jets and Joe Namath. So and it's never gotten any better since then. It's been a downhill spiral since then. But I'm thrilled about the two teams that are in this weekend. I'm excited about both of them. I'll be happy either one of them wins.
Yeah.
Well, you see, I don't even know who's playing 49ers, right?
It's Cincinnati and the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
No, not 49ers. It's Cincinnati and the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
You know, in Cincinnati, it's a real Cinderella story. You know, they went from only winning 2 games last year to being in the Super Bowl this year. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, as soon as the pack was out, I lost interest.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers lost me this year.
Yeah.
Once he pulled all that ego stuff, he lost me as a fan. I'm like,
yeah, he's pissed off.
Go away, retire.
Yeah.
You know, prima donna. Ugh.
Valiant. Was Barry in the office there? Was he one of the managers of Valiant? Was he?
No. Barry came in like maybe once a week, like usually on Fridays or something like that. We'd hand him a big juicy check and he'd hang out and we'd go to lunch and stuff like that. But he actually didn't have anything to do with the day-to-day of the company. Although it was offered to him, he didn't accept it. He was perfectly content with coming in and working with the knobs and just being Barry, you know. And it was great while it lasted, because, you know, he and I were like best friends for like 10 years, you know, but Valiant kind of changed him. He was, once we sold to Acclaim, he just left and never came back.
When did you separate from Valiant?
Well, after I sued them for breach of contract. Well, Acclaim came in, and you remember the Acclaim days, right? I mean, you never met these cats though, man. No. It's like working for the mafia. You know, I mean, these guys were hard. I mean, hardcore, like businessmen from Long Island, and they could care less about anything except their bottom. I used to sit in board meetings. I was a vice president then, so I had to go to these board meetings, and they would sit there and laugh about how they screwed their employees over.
Really?
You know, they would sit there and joke about it. I felt like I needed a shower every time I went to one of these things. You know, so it was a tumultuous time there. But you know the old story. They came in to try to turn us into an Image, which is who they wanted to buy. They actually went after Image first because they felt that met their demographic, and he wanted to change all the books. You know, he brought in his own designers and stuff like that. And he's going to like turn it into, I mean, just lobotomize the entire Valiant line. And I just took a stand. And as a result, he took away all my power. So I sat the last year of my tenure there. I sat in my office and read boating magazines. You know, they were paying me like $200,000 a year to sit in an office and read boating magazines. Okay, that's why you saw a rapid decline in like Control there. You know, that's where stuff like Death Mate came in, and the brilliant idea to put the books out bi-weekly. Yeah. You know, it's like, which I would have never done. But you saw what happened is like, so I got tired of just sitting there. I wanted to get on with my life. So I basically sued them for a breach of contract, for obstruction, because I wasn't actually doing my job as editor-in-chief. That was 9 months in court, and Greg Fishback, the CEO of the company, said he was going to tie me up in court until every cent I had made from the company was gone. You know, so I called an arbitrator in and I settled. I gave him back $1.7 million of the sale from the sale of the company, and I walked. Getting on with my life was worth more than that. God knows I had made enough money anyway. I mean, they overpaid for the company anyway. Yeah. But what happened is, so they brought Fabian in, and Fabian created that new Valiant line that immediately crashed and burned, you know, based on, you know, what they wanted for their video games, you know.
Yeah.
The only good thing that came out of the whole thing with Acclaim was the Turok video game, which was a huge hit.
Yeah.
You see Valiant struggling along today. It's out there. It doesn't have much of a presence, but they continue to put out books.
Yeah, Fred's still there too. Did you know that? Fred Pierce is still there.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, I talk to him all the time, man.
Wow.
You know, Hammerhead Pierce. Yes, I love that guy, man. But yeah, they brought him. They had some sense, and they brought him back in. You know, so he operates as the publisher now. There, yeah, you know, they. I think they're working virtually. They closed their offices down during the pandemic, and we're working virtually, which, you know, was actually not a bad strategy anyway, because overhead is what kills you. But you know, the margins on these things are so ridiculous that, I mean, that's why Dickie and I tried Future Comics, the whole idea of bypassing Diamond and distributing directly to people, because we had to do something to make comics profitable, because, you know, the margins were just shrinking constantly. So, I mean, that didn't work. We were a little bit ahead of our time, obviously. I mean, in the very beginnings of e-commerce, most of the comic shops were not set up for that, you know. So it was a great idea that was a little too early. I'm surprised no one else has done it. Even if you crowdfund, you still go through Diamond, right?
No.
No, okay, you don't.
We mail directly.
Crowdfunding is Future Comics.
We mail directly to our backers.
All right, so that is Future Comics then. Pretty much.
And of course, there are people crowdfunding their books that they're just trying to raise $3,000 to print it.
Yeah.
But there are other guys who are industry notables like Graham Nolan or Billy Tucci. And every one of their campaigns goes well over six figures.
Yeah, well, you have to. I mean, you're going to have to do something. Back during the days where I still did cons, I used to do this whole like lecture, an hour lecture on why the comic book industry doesn't work. And I would run the numbers. I would actually run the numbers and what it costs to produce a comic. I would just go through this whole thing. And when people started to realize, what I do is I'd find an accountant or a banker or somebody in the audience who knew numbers, and I'd have them start adding all this stuff up.
Yeah. And
when they got to the margins and the total, you know, I could hear open weeping in the audience. You know, I mean, people were just like crushed. You know, yeah, you know, because they thought we were all like millionaires and stuff. And I said,
Yeah.
no, in the Valiant days, everybody was getting 5-figure checks like it was nothing. Some got 6-figure checks back in those days. You know, that was like, you know, spectacular, right? I know some guys who bought their house and paid cash.
Right.
You know, that was something that I knew was never going to last. I used to sit there in those Wednesday meetings with all the Valiant guys, you know, the ones I stole from the Kubert School and stuff. And I would lecture them about how to balance their bank account, how to not go out and buy every laser disc in the world, because laser, you know, some still did, you know, it's like, and, you know, the squirrel your money away because this is not going to last.
Yeah.
You know, you had 21-year-old kids making, you know, $17,000 a month.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and some of them listened and some of them didn't. Valiant was much more of a life learning experience. It's for a lot of them because they were so young and they met with so much success so early. You know, it was really interesting because I'm still in touch with most of the Valiant guys. That's what I love about that place. It was, well, you were there, Mike. You know, it was a very special place. There was no comic book company like it.
Did you see the Bloodshot movie?
I was on the set, dude.
Yeah, he was there.
I was there.
Don't say anything about it,
I
Mike.
signed an NDA, so I can't say anything. But I talked to a friend of mine who is a very prominent screenwriter, and he used the OPOS. He said, "Do you have anything?" I had nothing to do with it, other than I was there as a Queen of England. You know, it was just a kind of a promotional thing. It wasn't even based on the original comic. That's what the thing killed me. You know, I'm like, at least Iron Man was based on the original comic. You know, I have 2 legacies. You know, I like I said, I have Iron Man and Ant-Man, and I have Valiant. So I mean, but I'm a purist. I really prefer the old stuff. You know, those, I think we did some great stories there, and we had a fabulous time doing it. And we were a close-knit family, you know. Some of us went on vacation together. I mean, me and 4 or 5 of the guys from the bullpen used to go down to Puerto Rico and go play volleyball on the beach and stuff, you know.
Nice.
Just to, you know, get away. I had Thanksgiving in my house every year for those people who couldn't go back home. You know, I would have Thanksgiving for all those wayward kids who couldn't make it back, and it's like it was a fantastic time. They got to sit there and work in their office, and there weren't cubicles. Mike, you remember, it's a very open space. But every Wednesday, I'd have a guest artist come in. So any given Wednesday, they could sit down with Barry or Dick Giordano or Stan Drake, or I mean, Jim Steranko came up once. You know, it's like, and you know, they would just, you know, they were just slack-jawed that they were able to get like, you know, instruction from some of the giants in the industry.
Didn't you write the X Factor when it first came out?
Yeah.
That was actually.
Are we jumping around, man?
Just a little bit.
Okay,
well, but when you said stuff about facts and figures, because I had forgotten just how big of a hit it was when it came out.
It held the record at Marvel for the top-selling book for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Until I think it was X-Men 1.
Yeah.
Jim Lee's X-Men 1 knocked it out of first place, but yeah, it was the best-selling book of all time there for a long time.
The reason to read a comic is if you put out a terrific comic with a great story. However,
you mean like Florida Man?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well,
have you seen that?
I have to be careful reading Florida Man down here. I live in Tampa. Remember?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I wrote it for you.
You were going to send me one, but you never did.
I will. Send me your address.
You want me to go to a comic shop and buy one? That's not going to happen.
You know, that book is out of print, and we only have a handful left, but I will send you one because I happen to have one.
You want me to give you my address on the air here?
No, don't give it on the air.
I think it's banned in Florida.
All the time. I love it because living here, I just turn on the local news. It's Florida. Yeah, it's Florida Man every day. You know. It's a miraculous state. It's surprised anyone's still alive here.
Books. You know, there are 3 Florida Man novels, and the graphic novel is based on the first one, and we're getting ready to do the second, which is even funnier. But the first Florida Man book was a struggle for reasons I can't go into on the air, and it ended up being kind of a Frankenstein's monster, but it still worked because the nature of the story was so episodic,
yeah,
and crazy the art fit right in, and we had 4 artists on the book, but you can hardly tell when we switch from one to the other, except for Vale Myerick, who drew 1 page.
Val Myrick did, yeah, really.
Oh yeah. Vale and I've been working together for years.
I love Val.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's down in
Great
Texas
painter.
now.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You must be aware of the struggles that Marvel and DC are having now making sales.
Well, yeah, of course. That's why I used to give that lecture, because I predicted. Well, here, and I'm going to say it again. I was wrong in my time frame because they've held on longer than I thought, but they are going to become prohibitive. So the average comic now, because people don't understand, they look at it as units sold. They don't look at it as the Avengers or the X-Men. You know, Marvel's all lumped because they're corporate into units sold. The average unit sold of a comic book is somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 copies. How can you make a profit on that?
I know.
It's a loss leader. Now, it made sense when you and I were doing comics because we were creating new characters. We were creating the new Ant-Man or War Machine or whatever. We were creating stuff that basically fed into the machine, right? Into the IP machine.
Yeah.
Nobody does that now. Nobody hands Marvel new characters or whatever.
No.
You know? I think the break-even's around 13.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, the average comic loses money.
Yeah.
So it's like it just I said like 5 years ago, what's going to happen, and Mike, you know this is true, right? One of these guys at either Disney or at Warner, some brown nose is going to look at those P&Ls and say, you know, we really could just reprint. We have a library that goes back, 70 years. We could just reprint this stuff and not even bother creating new stuff, and nobody would know the difference.
Well, they would know, but we've been waiting for them to make that announcement for a couple of years now.
They're going, it's coming. I said 5 years ago, but they've hung in longer than I thought they would. But it's going to happen because somebody's going to they're going to get a bonus and a big pat on the back for basically killing the comic industry. There's too much shit out there anyway.
Yeah, that's true. The Sturgeon's Law is true.
What they did in order to make up for the loss in revenue was just pump out more crud.
Right.
On a constant basis. This stuff, there's no. Just recently, I had to do a Spider-Gwen drawing for somebody in full color, right? Which I didn't even know who Spider-Gwen was because I don't read comics, right? So I go online, and there's 6 versions of her.
Yeah.
And I go, which one do I do? Because in each one of the comics, it'll be issue 6 or issue 2, she looks entirely different.
Yeah.
There's no specs anymore on the characters. That's why I refuse to do Hulkbuster. There is not a single Hulkbuster issue where he looks like he did in any of the other ones. There are no specs on any of these characters. And it's just I would be maddened by that. I would just be crazy. The only thing good I can say about Valiant is they still do model sheets over there. So if I do a cover for Valiant, I get model sheets from them.
Case of Star Wars, they don't know whether to shit or go blind, and they can't seem to please not just everyone. They can't please anyone. Although I hear a lot of good stuff about the Mandalorian. I don't.
Mandalorian is they're generally speaking, they're better than the movies.
Yeah.
The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett generally better than the films have been. Except for, but I've never been a Star Wars fan anyway. I got to be honest with you, because I always thought the Jedis were pussies. I mean, you go look at the 3 movies. Luke never really wins a fight. He always runs away or winds up getting his hand cut off, or his father saves him during a deathbed confession. But it's like they don't win fights; they just run away or survive. And I always thought that Lucas has a hard time. He claims to be a disciple of Joseph Campbell, but he obviously hasn't read that book thoroughly.
Yeah.
But it was so obvious that Obi-Wan should have been the hero in the prequels. And it's so obvious that these are Han Solo movies, original Star Wars with Luke as a guest star.
Right.
Because Luke is the bumbling apprentice.
Yeah.
If you follow the archetypes, right? Not the hero. Han's the hero. But we get confused, I guess. But people, they were revolutionary. I understand all that. But you know, and I had a 9-year-old daughter at the time who was a Jedi, so I obviously I wound up being steeped in it just from that, because nothing's better than watching Star Wars with a 9-year-old kid. You know, it's for Jon Favreau too. You know, and I know Favreau. You know, and he knows his way around the story. You know, Favreau is not an idiot. He's a smart guy. You know, he's a good director. He's a good writer. You know, and so they got the right guy on it. You know. I definitely think it's better than the films. That's for sure. The time Luke was not a pussy is when he showed up in The Mandalorian.
Yeah,
you know, because not to give that away for those people who haven't watched it, but he does show up, and it's like he was pretty awesome at that. You know,
Who played him?
Mark Hamill did. They CGI'd him like they did Peter Cushing. And then this year they hired the guy who did the deep fake of it. They did him CGI. It looked okay. It wasn't great. But then this guy showed up on the internet who created this thing called deepfake, where he can make it look 100% human.
Yeah.
100%. And so they did it again this season. And it's just like they went back to 1983 and had Mark Hamill shoot a bunch of scenes. I mean, it's amazing.
Wow.
You know? Yeah. They can pretty much do anything now. It fascinates me being in the film business now. You know, it's kind of like I see this technology is just amazing. Pretty soon we'll be able to do that at home, you know, on our own computers. It'll be awesome.
A number of studios would be more than happy to ditch all their real life actors and just use CGI.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't mind casting a gangster movie with Humphrey Bogart in it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, it's like
we do it all the time in comics because you can, and people love that sort of thing. And you know, Steranko was the guy that he did it originally when he put Sidney Greenstreet into Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, and then Paul and Doug Minch got away with a ton of
they put Sean Connery and Bruce Lee.
Oh, Marvel should have been sued by every one of those actors, you know. But it was awesome.
Yeah,
you know. You never asked me why I'm in Florida after all your poking around being the.
What are you doing in Florida, Bob?
Well, I was working in Hollywood, right? And as you know, I have a daughter who married and had 4 beautiful children. And I realized that I was missing their childhood.
Yeah.
That, you know, they barely knew me. And so and also the fact that I was doing production designs for a film, which still hasn't come out yet. And I realized that I was living in the Valley and I had been telecommuting, and I hadn't actually gone into LA in like months. You know, everything, and I'm like, why am I here? I needed to find a new apartment, and I bet a crappy apartment with bad plumbing and bugs started at $3,000 a month.
Yeah,
you know, and I'm, you know, in West Hollywood, and I'm kind of like, you know, this is ridiculous. You know, for half of that, I could live like a king in Florida. You know, and there's no state tax and all this kind of stuff, and I can be with my grandchildren. So I just said, you know, the heck with it. But what I decided to do was start my own production company.
There we go.
Right here in Florida, you see, Wax Monkey Pictures. So that's what I did. So then I spent the rest of my time flying around the globe looking for money.
Yeah,
I've been to some great places, though. Like I said, I've been to Japan. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East and in the UAE. Made wonderful friends there. I love the UAE. I was thinking about retiring there, actually.
Well, how far do you live from your daughter?
20 minutes.
Oh, nice.
But you know, unfortunately, I have grand men now. Not
right.
Yeah, 3 sons and a daughter. The oldest is getting married this Saturday.
Wow!
Congratulations.
The rest of them are the boys are in college, and the youngest girl is 14, just turned 14. So yeah, there you go. So they don't need me anymore. As soon as they start driving, they have no use for me.
Yeah.
So I'm about a year away from becoming extinct. About moving to Europe or to the UAE or someplace like that, you know, where it's warm all the time. I can swim all the time because I love to swim. That's my exercise. You know, I get out. Generally during the day, I'll go out and I'll do 20 laps. You know.
Do you have a pool where you live?
Yeah. But unfortunately, right now the temperature outside is 49 degrees. We're having a really bad cold snap, but I was swimming up until last month. You know, I won't go to an indoor pool because they're just COVID pits.
No, I don't like
a
those
men's
either.
locker room is bad enough as it is, right?
Is
Can you
this
imagine
your,
going there
your
with COVID?
private pool?
Huh?
Do you have a private pool?
Well, no, I live in like an apartment complex, kind of
Oh,
like adult condominium kind of things, you know, and they have two pools, you know, here, a big one and a smaller one. And it's a decent enough size that I can go out there. But during the day, since it's all young professionals and stuff, there's no one home.
That's
So
cool.
I have a pool to myself. You know, I always joke with the realtors that, you know, I said, there's somebody in my pool.
Yeah.
You know? So I'll go out there, you know, after I finish work in the morning before lunch, and I'll do 20 laps, you know, and it's like that's what it's keeping me alive because neither one of us are getting younger, brother. You know what I'm saying?
We buy a membership in a neighborhood pool here, but of course that's only operable for about 5 months.
Well, it's Colorado. It's like you want? Can I tell you quickly my famous Colorado story? Because you know,
by all means.
I lived in Colorado. I lived in Aurora for a while, right?
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. That's actually where I got sober. Because I went out there promoting X Factor and got a little too gassed up and wound up doing the Hangover. I wound up woke up married to a stranger. Yeah.
You told us about that.
Yeah, you know about that, right? So yeah, I mean, I gotta say one thing, you know, I've done some dumb shit. But man, it's colorful. You know, I mean, I've never been boring. You know, I can say that. I can say my life has been interesting, to say the least. So no, but I went into rehab there, right? So I was living there for a while. So I think I was working on Iron Man 250. It was like a double-sized issue, and it was just, it was early September, beautiful. You know, and it's like in order to stay awake, I had to go 72 hours without sleeping in order to finish this, to get it in the mail to FedEx, to get there in time. So, you know, I'd go out and I'd throw myself in the pool for a little while and you come back out, right? Because it was September there. It's still beautiful, right? So I finish this thing and FedEx comes and picks it up and I hit the bed like a ton of bricks and I'm out cold. I wake up about 16 hours later. And this is before cell phones, right? So I couldn't check my cell phone or anything. And I get up and I'm so disoriented, right? And I throw back the curtains and there's a foot of snow on the ground. And I'm like, oh my God, I was in a coma. You know, I started I'm looking for a mirror to see how much weight I'd lost or anything like that, you know, because I thought I had slept through till winter, right? But it's Colorado because you're so high up, you can get a snowstorm in September. So I went from one day from swimming to a foot of snow on the ground. But it freaked me out, man, because I thought I had slipped into a coma.
Well, we moved here to get away from the winters in Wisconsin.
Well, yeah, well, that's still an upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, because Colorado is way more beautiful than Wisconsin, man.
Yeah, and it's much drier here because of the altitude, and it's that
My
humidity.
sinuses loved it. I always had bad sinuses my whole life, so I'm sure the fans love to hear about my nasal cavities. Okay, take a look.
If you could zoom in.
Cocaine shot here, you know. So we should stay on topic. You know what I mean? It's like next we're going to talk about hemorrhoids or something.
Yeah.
Getting back to comics, you know, I'm always reminded that comics have a life of their own, independent of the publishers, because so many people love the form. And I always say comics are the most forgiving medium there is. You can get away with stuff in comics you couldn't in any other medium.
Well, you said it yourself, because time is not a factor. You know, working in Hollywood scripts, time is everything. That's the hardest transition I had to make, was I had to contend with time for the first time in my life as a writer. So yeah, you know, you're timeless. You could tell the creation of the universe in 22 pages.
Yeah,
that's true. These people who love comics and want to do them are going to continue to put out their product, no matter what. They're not looking to make money for it.
We're the only country in the world that doesn't get it, that the format doesn't work. We've used the same business model for 100 years. We're idiots. Hey, have you been to Korea? Have you been to Japan?
No, my wife keeps
comic shops are flourishing there. They have so much pride. Have you been to France? Have you seen, some of the beautiful, incredible books that come out of comic shops? And
I get some of those books.
We just don't get it.
I get those books.
We are so mired in our ways.
Yeah.
You know, that
Well,
refuse to
there's
let go
also
of that
an
pamphlet.
intellectual snobbery
pamphlet.
at work here.
Yeah.
That people look down on comics as not a legitimate art form, and there's a good reason for that.
I hate
is-
this. I hate that you have to wrap it in plastic so it doesn't rot. You know, because I got some books out there, you know, by Carl Sagan. I got some books by Arthur C. Clarke. They're not rotting because they're hardback books. No, it's just stupid. We have held on to this format way beyond its lifespan. You know, in other countries, you look at how Japan. I mean, and I toured when I went to Japan. I toured comic shops while I was there. I did a signing in one of the comic shops there, and they still love the American characters. They just don't love our comics.
Right.
But you know, Iron Man is huge all over the world. You know, I did a comic shop signing there in Tokyo, and there was a line. It was rain, and there was a line like around the block, like a Russian bread line. You know, probably because the shop was about as big as my
Right.
our bathroom. But you know, it's still the fact that people came out on a Sunday in the rain just to meet me and get an autograph and stuff, and they all brought gifts.
That's great.
You know, they all brought like sweets, which is very popular in Japan to do that or whatever. And you know, a couple of them, one kid made me a lantern with my name on it in Japanese, and although I could say it giant asshole too, I don't really know because I don't. But I asked Yoshie, who I was dating at the time, if it said giant asshole. She said, "No, it's your name." You go to Korea, you go to Japan, you know, you go to France, and you see these incredible books, hardback, beautiful, full size, so you can see the artwork in all its glory. And it's stories about, it's love stories, it's westerns, it's gothic horror, it's sex, it's the gamut of everything that people enjoy. It's not just underwear boys. The margins on a hardback book are amazing compared to a comic book. That pamphlet, that 22-page pamphlet that you have to encase in plastic so it doesn't rot, you know, it's seen its day. And, you know, if it has to go out the hard way, so much the better. But the point is there are lots of great alternatives, you know.
Well, there are some American publishers that are doing non-traditional, non-superhero stuff, and they're doing very well with bookstore distribution.
Look what happened with Mouse this week.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as the right wingers tried to burn it, it becomes a bestseller again. You know, good job, man. And you know, and they don't have to wrap it in plastic because it's in hardcover.
A lot of these publishers that are doing graphic novels are really carrying on the tradition of the underground that flourished in the late 60s and early 70s, which were intensely personal autobiographical stories like the material that Harvey Pekar or Robert Crumb put out. But there are a lot of new, young creators that are doing that sort of material, and they're getting published in bookstore distribution.
The only problem with the underground stuff is they were drawn with crayons. You know, I mean, had they been drawn with a little more aesthetics, you know, you're right. They were far more interesting than the mainstream, you know, superhero comics or whatever. But the point of it is something will have to change. You know, I've been preaching this for 10 years now. That's why I got out. My last comic was 2010. I'm done. You know, because I just saw the writing on the wall. There's just nothing left for me to do. First of all, and secondly, it's kind of like this will not survive in its present form. And I'm not the guy to conduct the revolution. I'm far too old for that. You know, and I'm perfectly fine working in the film business. You know, it's like. One, the money's much better. You know, I think it was Evergreen almost says, I mean, you meet a higher class of asshole in business, you know, because at least some of the guys in the movie business actually know what they're talking about. But no, I mean, I was loving it because I was getting challenges. You know, I mean, I was working, you know, I wrote some spec scripts. I worked on some television series. I did the design work and stuff like that. So I got to do a spectrum of things that were all challenging me. And the money compared to comics, I mean, I did 5 drawings for a movie, right? Just concept drawings, right? And these are roughs. Like I would rough out for a Marvel cover,
right?
And it was $10,000 for 5. And it took me like a couple hours. You know how long you have to work to make $10,000 doing a comic book?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Tell your viewers.
Well,
Months.
DC,
Yeah.
what did they pay me
It wasn't just
$10,000
about
for?
the
I
money.
think it was for that Dead Man graphic novel I did. But you know, as a writer, a good writer should be able to turn out a 24-page script a week at least.
Yeah. Well, you and I come from a different era too, where doing stuff on a timely basis was it wasn't we didn't have a choice.
Right.
You miss a couple deadlines, you're done.
That's it.
I mean, it just didn't work that way back then. I mean, when it was still run like a real business, I mean, that it wasn't run by hobbyists. So, it was really, I mean, you got some, I mean, that's why I stayed up 72 hours and went into a coma in Colorado, because I couldn't miss that deadline, man.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm belittling comics or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I'm going to use a Nicholas Meyer quote from Star Trek, that gallivanting around the universe is a game for the young.
Yeah.
Is that
comics are a young man's profession.
Yeah.
If you're young and you're juicy and you're hungry and you need to make a name for yourself, and things like that, going over and doing a few issues of Spider-Man is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Is that from The Wrath of Khan, that quote?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just watching that the other day.
One of the most beautiful scripts ever written. There's not a wasted line in that movie. I mean, not that I'm not even a Trek fan, but I'm just talking aesthetically from a script.
No, you're right.
There's not a wasted scene or line in that movie. Everything furthers the plot. It's in that sense, it's structured because Nick Meyer rewrote it uncredited, and when he turned it into, like I said, it was it's just a thing of beauty. I was a big fan of Nicholas Meyer anyway.
Me too.
Yeah, and I got a chance to meet him a couple of times while I was in Hollywood, which was just you want to see me fanboy out. That was what I was fanboying out, to say the least. But he's a terrific guy, very dry, funny, dry guy. But it's really true for comics now. If you're an up and coming artist, you got some juice, you got some and you got the wherewithal to stick to it and play the game, it's worth it. You go in, like I said, do a bunch of issues of Spider-Man, people notice you, and then you can go off and do your own, thing like Mike's doing. Nothing more frustrating for me is to sit there and watch things I created gallivant across the screen without any sort of compensation or.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that
it really sticks. There is so much merchandising out there with my art on it that I mean, hundreds of thousands.
Didn't you create War Machine?
Well, I created Rhodey.
Well, and they paid you for that.
No, we talked about it.
Really? Because
for
they paid me for using characters I created in the Flash comic.
Well, DC's different. I've been getting Huntress royalties since 1978.
Wow.
Okay. Because Paul had initiated one of the very first creator participation programs. The Huntress, I always joke, I say it's like having a hooker who never ages. She's always out there making me money. Because even that damn horrible Birds of Prey movie, I got a serious 5-figure check for that.
Wow.
And I'm like, and I know I'm one of the 3 people who saw it, and I saw it for free.
Yeah.
I went to the premiere in London, and it's like I was one of the few people still awake by the end of it. But it was like, no, the Huntress, I get regular royalties every 6 months for the last 40-something years.
Wow.
But Marvel had a different approach. So we had to have long talks, but we came to an agreement. We came to an understanding. In fact, funny story about that. Actually, because I was coming back from doing a comic shop appearance. I was coming back into Manhattan. You cross over the Midtown bridge going down to the tunnel, right? So you see Queens down below there. And I remember I was coming back, and there was actually, I wasn't at a convention. It was actually from this girl I was liaisoning with in Michigan. Okay, but anyway, so I'm going over the bridge, coming down into the tunnel, and I see down there the James Rhodes Tool and Die Company. And I started thinking, because it was right in the process of creating Tony Stark's best friend. And I go, Jimmy, I go, Rhodey, because, this guy follows him around and backs him up and all that. I said, that's perfect, right? So that's where the name came from. The James Rhodes Tool and Die Company isn't there anymore. But I took their name, yeah.
Cool.
So you owe them money.
No, they're out of business. I don't owe them anything. But whoever James Rhodes was and his the tool and die maker,
yeah,
he now is immortal.
Yeah. Wondering about your how you made the transition from comics to film and stuff like that.
Well, what happened was in 2008, I went out. I think it was 2007, actually. I got invited to Hollywood to work on Iron Man, the movie.
Right.
Because David Maisel, who's the founder of Marvel Studios, is the world's biggest Bob Layton Iron Man fan. His office looks like a Bob Layton art museum. He still sends me pictures sometimes. It's like, look, I bought this cover for $54,000. And I'm like, okay, bite me. It's like, but he'll go out and he'll drop 50 grand on one of my covers, and then he'll show it to me. And I say, yeah, I probably sold it for $100 to pay my rent that month,
Yeah.
That's another thing that just kills you, man. Everyone was screaming about that Mike Zeck cover that sold for $3 million or something. And I'm just like, how much did Mike Zeck get?
Yeah.
Heritage should have a thing where 2% or 3% goes to the artist.
Yeah.
Just as a, acknowledging, it's like that. Because I felt bad for Mike. Besides, 3% of $3 million isn't a bad payday either.
Oh yeah.
That's what it's about money, but none of us are rich, are we?
Not me, Hoss.
So, well, some of us were. I told you when I retired. And this isn't getting to the story. When I retired from Valiant, I'd gotten away with about $3 million altogether, and so I put it in a brokerage house. And I had to manage it for me. And I would just decide I would live off the dividends, which was about $6,000-7,000 a month, which is way more than I needed. So I decided to move to Florida because I hated cold weather. I wanted to live someplace warm where I could swim all the time, right? So, but what happened was just prior to 9/11, Congress was passing a bill that were going to subsidize the airlines because they were all in terrible shape right then. So the brokerage house, which remained nameless, Urban, they sunk all my money into airline stocks.
Oh.
Just a month before 9/11. So when the buildings went up, and it's an act of God, what can I do? But
yeah,
most of my money went up with the building. Like I said, I grew up dirt poor, and I've been a millionaire. And the only difference is you don't look at the price tags when you buy something.
Yeah,
nothing changes otherwise. I'm pretty well off now, but I'm just saying, I got out of the comics pretty well. So anyway, so I was cruising there for a while, and then after that happened, I started Future, because Dickie came up with an idea how 3 old farts could basically revolutionize comics. And I took the rest of the money that I had left and sunk it into that. Well, that didn't work either. So anyway, so I wound up pretty much kind of like at a dead end where I couldn't really go back to comics because at that point nobody wanted me, because once you've been a boss, they don't like you anymore. It's real tough to get a job because once you've been an authority figure, you didn't hire me way back when. You remember you had that company and you didn't hire me, Yeah. And it's like they know, but they never forget, right? But so I was like blacklisted for about 5 years. And then I get a thing out of the blue asking me to come out to LA and work on the DVD side of the Iron Man movie. And like I said, David Maisel, being a huge fan of mine, he gave me the greatest compliment in the world, the best one I've ever gotten from anybody. Because he said, if it wasn't for his love of my work, there would be no Marvel Studios.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, that's the highest compliment I've ever gotten. It's purely coincidental. He could have easily loved Moon Knight more, but I was just luck of the draw, I suppose. But he happened to be. That's why it was no accident that Iron Man was the first thing they did. I'm friends with Hawk Osby, who wrote the screenplay. Still friends with him to this day. Great guy, terrific writer. Also wrote Children of Men, too. Academy Award nominated writer,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was one of those things where it was lightning in a bottle. Everything was just in the right. I could feel it. Everything was just right. I mean, Downey was the perfect guy,
Oh yeah.
Favreau was really trying to make his bones on that movie, right? He'd had some success, but this was it for him. So you just feel it. You could just feel it in the air, man. That it was going to be huge. So what happens? I went out there and I did the DVD, and I really had such a great time. And I met Nick Meyer while I was there, and I said, you know what? I haven't had any challenges, and it's like this is incredibly a whole new medium for me. So I pulled up stakes and I moved to LA. With not much going on at the moment. Actually, first job I landed was writing Iron Man Armored Adventures for Nicktoons.
Nice.
I talked to Brandon Allman, who was the showrunner, and he's like, "We've been ripping your stories off for years. We might as well just go to the source." Right?
Yeah.
I hated television. I hated working in TV. I worked for Cinemax, and I worked for Nicktoons, and first year or so or two out there, and I was done. It's like there's too many chefs in the kitchen on television, especially on kids shows and stuff. It was just the approval processes you got to go through, and the amount of people who have their hands in a cookie jar is unbelievable. So I found that frustrating after being a boss most of my career.
Yeah.
Having to kowtow to 5 or 6 editors at once, all contradicting each other in a different color ink.
Yeah.
Is very, very frustrating. And of course, Marvel was using me to do promo because, then Iron Man 2 came along. I did 25 or 30 interviews with various magazines or whatever for Iron Man 2, and I went on to the set and all that kind of stuff. And then what happened was, so I started working on my own spec scripts. And one night I was at a party at BOA, very fashionable place on the Sunset Boulevard. All the pretty, beautiful people hang out there. And it was a birthday party for a friend of mine who was an agent, which, by the way, I would never use the term friend and agent ever again in a sentence. After 10 years out there. And I ran into a fellow there who was really terrific. I was pitching to him an idea I had for a story, which is the movie I'm doing right now, as a matter of fact. It's taken me 11 years, but we're finally actually making the film, where we just finished the initial contracts and all this stuff. We're going to be shooting in Sweden later this year. But a really funny story, because I'm talking to this guy. We're all sitting in the fire pit lounge and stuff. Everybody's like, having a good time being Los Angelinos, this kind of stuff. And so I'm telling him the idea I had for this story. And he goes, I really like that. He goes, look, my dad and I have a production company. Would you like to come out to the Disney lot and pitch it to him? And I said, sure, why not? He says, so he says, come on out. I'll leave a pass for you at the gate or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. So a couple of days later, I drive over to Burbank, and I go in the lot. Now the fellow's name was Michael Olmos, all right, and I didn't think about that. It's a common enough name, and he was also black, right?
Right.
I figured, I didn't think much of it. So I walk into Olmos Productions, and he said, "Yeah, Dad's waiting. He's in the office," and he goes, swing open the doors, and there's Commander Adama sitting there, friggin' Edward James Olmos. And I'm like freaking, because I blindsided. And I kind of do this, like, Michael and Eddie, Michael, Eddie, Michael, Eddie. and Michael goes, I'm adopted. I'm just like, oh man, because I was not prepared to meet Eddie. But as it turned out, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life, because Eddie became that mentor for me in Hollywood that Dickie was in comics.
Yeah.
Eddie's done everything. He's been everywhere. He's been in everything. Academy Award nominee, writer, director, and he took a real liking to me. And he kind of took me under his wing. And so I worked with him and his son Michael for years out there doing various things. And Michael and I hit it off. I mean, we're still both Ed and Bodie and Michael, the whole family. I mean, I'm an honorary Olmos. You know, it's like
Nice.
whenever I go out there, I always see Eddie and I see Michael, and I hope I get a chance to work with them again sometime because
That's great.
They were so much fun. But so that's how I spent most of my time out there, is almosting. You know, this movie is called The Helix. It was the first thing I wrote for him, and the thing is, we're sitting. I was going out to Burbank. Michael was on the set of Philly Brown, which is the movie he was shooting at the time, right? Which was, I don't know if you've ever seen Philly Brown. Good movie. And so during all the setup time, because you got hours, he said, "Come on out. We'll pitch some stuff around." And so we came up with an idea for a movie that was more commercial and more franchisable than The Helix. The Helix is more of a sci-fi art film. Like, it's like Arrival, okay? You know, you can't do Arrival the sequel or Arrival the superhero, right?
Yeah.
Or Arrival toys. Everybody gets to play with big, eggs and stuff and squids. I mean, it's not that kind of thing, right? The Helix is an adult psychological sci-fi film. So, and Eddie, once I pitched the new idea to Eddie, he loved it so much, he shelved the Helix in favor of it. Because he said, this is an art film. He goes, we might make $12 on this, but this thing has legs that we can go on forever. So they shelved it, and so it sat on a shelf until the rights reverted back to me about 5 years later or whatever. And so I decided I wanted to go back and revisit it, so I rewrote it. And so when I got here, I started shopping around because it's somewhere between $5 and $11 million to make this thing. As technology keeps improving, the price goes down. Fortunately,
Yeah.
It would have been a $20 million film, 10 years ago. So anyway, that's why I'm shooting it in Sweden, because we get incredible tax incentives from the Swedish government over there. They give us 50 cents on the dollar up to $2 million, so they just throw in the kitty.
That's great.
While I was in Hollywood, I wrote 8 spec scripts. All of them were placed somewhere. They all got placed and died a slow, lingering death from one reason or another, mostly politics. The absolute worst story, and I tell it all the time as a caveat to people, the best script I ever wrote was a story called Messiah 2.0, which was about the second coming of Christ. It comes back as a computer program. And it's a comedy about the end of the world. And it's the best thing I've ever written. I'm just saying flat down. It's because it's funny. It's sociological. It just touches all the bases, right? And there's a romance, there's a romantic comedy in there too, right? So it's hard to do. It's few people have pulled it off. So I'm going to a cocktail party up in the Hollywood Hills for 4th of July, and I run into one of the heads of development at Summit Pictures, Summit Entertainment. She asked me, "What are you working on?" And I said, "I just finished the spec script." And she goes, and I told her what it was. She said, "Oh, I want to read it." So I sent it to her, and she said, "This is the best thing I've read in 5 years." She goes, "I want to make this movie." And so I'm just beside myself with joy. So 6 months go by, and I'm like losing my mind, right? And I call Eddie, and Eddie's like, "Bobby, if they didn't want to do it, they'd just tell you." He goes, "The longer it sits there, the better it is for you. That means they're thinking about it." So I said, fine, right? So what finally happened is, as you probably know, Lionsgate came in about 2012 and bought Summit and threw everybody and everything out. Because they killed the servant master there in Hollywood. It's just like the pharaohs. They come in and they kill everybody. So yeah, I was just told we don't do religious pictures. Well, it wasn't a religious picture because the thing was an allegory. The computer program wasn't really Jesus. It was, the whole thing was an allegory. It was never stated that it was anything divine. And Eddie and Michael had to talk me off a ledge on that one. I was just ready to pack it all in and quit, But that happened to me about 6 times, where I'd had something done. They said, "We want it," and in 2 cases, the agent that was working for me at the time negotiated me right out of the deal. Because an agent is your best friend until there's money on the table.
Yeah,
and then it's every man for themselves.
Yeah.
So be wary. Use your lawyer. If you have an entertainment lawyer, use your lawyer.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, use your lawyer. Don't use an agent.
Right.
Agents, like I said, agents are only good if you're Robert Downey Jr. or Steven Spielberg.
Right.
You know, if you're Bob Layton, they're not much help to you because they're basically going to try to take every cent they can out of your mouth. I hated living in LA. I hated the traffic and the expense and all that kind of stuff. I miss my friends and I miss the food.
Yeah,
you know, the food there is amazing. You know, compared to Florida, right?
Well,
I mean, it's just one giant fast food mall.
you can't get a fresh gator in Hollywood.
There are hardly any mom and pop restaurants in Florida, in Tampa at all. You know, it's crazy.
Too bad.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, you know, LA is just renowned for its like amazing food. You know, so I miss that, but I don't miss giving myself. I live 14 miles from LAX, and I had to give myself 3 hours to get there. You know, I don't miss that at all. As Michelle, my business partner on Box Monkey Pictures. By the way, we have a website too, boxmonkeypictures.com. It just went up recently, so there's not a lot on there yet. But as we start working on the Helix, I'm going to be posting almost every day on there. All right,
cool.
But Michelle told me she encouraged me to leave and go back and be with my grandkids and stuff. She said, "You got the most valuable thing you could from here. You learned the language and customs of Hollywood."
Yeah,
you know, and you have to learn to speak bullshit fluently, you know, and I did. I learned the language and customs of working in that particular industry, and that was invaluable.
Thank you, Bob.
Are you done with me?
Yeah.
Apparently, you.
You just discouraged me. Like, bye, bitch.
I'll call you tomorrow. We can chat.
What is there anywhere else you want them to follow you or check out your stuff?
I'm on
BobLayton.com.
all social media. I'm obviously Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but they can also go to my website. And if they want to order commissions, because everybody always asks about that. Yeah, because I've been doing that during the pandemic. I've been like a war profiteer because it's like without any Comic Cons, you know, I went back to doing commissions because you know, and it's like because. The contract, they weren't filming anything because everything had shut down, and especially on independent films because the insurance is astronomical on an independent film. Yeah, you know, so during the pandemic, there was no way to get insurance, you know, in order to make the movie. So everything kind of put on hold. But if you go to BobLayton.com, you know, that's a direct line to me. Yeah. You know, it's like I answer, you know, most of my mail myself, and it's like. I have a commissions page and I have a news page and all that kind of stuff. I haven't updated it recently because I've been locked in my apartment for 2 years. But other than that, you know, I'm trying to update it too now that they're working on Armor Wars, that they're getting ready to start production on Armor Wars at Marvel Studios. Ant-Man just wrapped production, principal photography rather. Yeah. So I got some stuff coming up in the pipe. Yeah. That's always good for the PR. Yep.
Yeah, so request Bob to draw Spider-Gwen and the Hulkbuster.
Yeah, you can.
Those are his favorite.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy of my shorts to eat. All right, guys. Listen, it was a lot of fun.
Right, yeah, this is a great interview. People are going to love this.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do it again sometime.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, brother.